guys, we're back. Oh my goodness. So funny story. I caught coronavirus. And man, that's like a real thing. It's no fun. I was like out for 2 weeks straight. And this is like my first real week back in the office with like, I would say what, like 80% energy, 2 cups of coffee. So it's fun. All fun stuff. So,
well, and I'm happy to have you back too.
Yeah.
I was really missing you.
Is it stressful without me?
Yes, and I legit wanted just to come to your house and cuddle with you.
Okay, so we're not codependent or anything.
No, not at all, right?
Just want to say hi to a bunch of the people who are logged in here. Rod, nice that you and Laura are chiming in from Michigan. That's cool. Sorry it's so late where you're at, but I so appreciate you. Jay-Z, woohoo! Thanks for joining back in. And then Danielle, girl, I can't even tell you enough how much I absolutely love you and all of your support. Thank you for always tuning in. And LaShonda, thank you. I missed you guys more than you know. So I appreciate it. We're going to have another really great video on Monday and then another live. So just tune in. Knock on wood. I'm like healthy for the rest of the year.
You will be. Once you get COVID, you're like invincible after that. That's what I truly believe.
Okay. Let's hope we don't like get banned now from YouTube. Okay, so we got a bunch of questions that were emailed into us. You guys, we're going to start answering those while you guys start filling in the chat with your questions. But first one is from Nishelli. And it says, my husband is from South America and recently got his citizenship and doesn't have a credit score. What would you suggest for him to start building his credit? So first and foremost, I do just want to disclaim one thing because I've actually had quite a few people trying to qualify with foreign income. So long as you have a valid U.S. social and you have authorization to work here in the U.S., we can use history and employment history from your previous country to help you qualify for a home loan now. So I have a client who relocated here from Canada. We got the Canadian tax returns, proof of employment. He's a salaried position here in the United States now. That person qualifies, and they qualify even without U.S. credit. So there are loan types that will allow you to qualify with higher down payments, maybe alternative lines of credit like rent, utilities. And so don't just disqualify yourself if that's your situation. Definitely check with the loan officer. And to answer this specific question, though, the best way to build credit is to open up 3 different lines of credit, 2 secured credit cards, and then maybe 1 secured loan. That credit, that diversity in credit and then keeping them for 12 months is what's really going to give you a good score. You want to keep your credit balances at 30% of the limit. Most of the time, secured credit cards are around $500. So just keep in mind, right? You want to keep that at 30% of whatever the balance is. And then after a year, they typically refund whatever your deposit was. Same thing for loans. They're typically like $500 to $1,000. So in certain cases, you will either take a higher interest to start building your credit or you will have to pay a security deposit, but awesome ways to build your credit.
Mm-hmm. And then she also asked, what do you think will happen to the market, low inventory, et cetera?
Well, guys, I think that low inventory is just a thing of right now. I mean, there is a ton of pent-up demand for people that haven't been able to get homes for months. So even though we saw a couple weeks where mortgage applications were declining, I mean, the number of people that were trying to purchase is still at an all-time high. So I would say that honestly, into the foreseeable future, into next year, we are still in a seller's market.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. Okay, and then Sabrina commented in, hey Lizzie, I had an appraisal done and it came in a little low, FHA. They ordered another one. That one came in really low. We're disputing it, but do they keep the lowest one or does the third one?
So it's rare that you'll just have another appraisal ordered unless there were what were called material deficiencies on the very first report or you switched lenders, okay? So typically they'll always go with the lowest of the 2 valuations in a lender situation. And you really, it's difficult in this environment without like recent sales, a lot of information about improvements to dispute an appraisal report, especially if they have 2 of them that are not coming in at purchase price. So it is lower of the two. And if you really want to dispute that, you're looking for most recent sales within a 1 mile radius within like the most recent month, if you can, that is similar square footage and similar improvements.
Okay. All right. And then the 1KCH. I have 8 months left on my lease on a house in Chandler. When do you think a good time is to start shopping for a mortgage?
So, well, that's a loaded question. I would have told you prior to, it was about 90 days. I think it's good to start the process as soon as possible because it is taking people up to 6 months to actually find a property. In addition to that, like I always tell people to at least get their pre-qualification done 6 months to a year in advance, even if they're not ready to purchase, just so that you find out if there's anything that you need to address, like credit issues or employment issues. Like a lot of people's income was dramatically impacted by COVID last year. And so you want to know how that's going to impact your qualification this year. But it might actually take you 8 months, truthfully, to find a property in this marketplace. So things to consider, you have to be willing to break a lease, right? Or you have to be willing to go month to month if you're planning on waiting longer. And also you have to figure out like, you know, if you have any money to pay over ask price or over appraised value in this market. So definitely sooner than later to get pre-qualified.
100%. And then Willie Cab said, hi, Lizzie, what do you think about FHA 203K?
So I like the loan program a lot because it allows you to buy a property that needs some TLC. I think it's a better product for refinance right now than it is for purchase, primarily because they take 60 to 90 days to close. And right now, contractors are really hard to come by. I know personally from firsthand experience, we've been trying to get our bathroom fixed. Like I have a literal leak for many months now. And it was like I contracted the contractor back in November and they're just starting to do the work now. So I would say refinance is all the way, and it's a really great way to improve your house and add value.
Yeah, and especially if you're not able to, if you were wanting to purchase and you weren't able to find a home, this could be a great option for you to refinance and then just, you know, spice up your current home.
Yeah, and just so you know, with 203K loans, you're doing renovations, you're doing replacements, and you can actually also add square footage. Things that you'll be limited on are like pool repairs, adding like things like shutters. So we're talking about renovations and improvements, and then maybe upgrades to the square footage.
Oh, my mic is low. Can you help me with that, please?
I love how we just talked to Zeke off camera.
I know. Well, hey, I love this advice so you guys can hear us. So, okay. Well, I'm going to talk closer to the mic right now, but this is actually a really interesting question. This is from Stacy Allard.
Okay.
She said, Lizzie, question for you. I'm hearing that inventory limit is really not an issue, but that overseas investors looking for a place to park money are buying up houses here in the U.S. and that some corps are as well. Entire neighborhoods, in fact. What is your answer to that aspect?
I have not heard that conspiracy theory as of yet, but here's what I will say. So large corporations and hedge funds and retirement accounts actually have purchased real estate in blocks. They were renovating them, they were flipping them, they've invested in things like Open Door and OfferPad. I don't believe that they are causing as much of an issue as like this statement would make it sound. And the government has actually put on some more regulations in terms of limiting the amount of investment loans that are being able to be produced. So I don't know if this is as much of an issue as just in general, like we have the largest pool of first-time home buyers that we've seen in history. And we have an aging community that hasn't left their properties, and we haven't really built much in 10 years. So I think this is just a perfect storm of issues to create low inventory.
100%. Real quick, Nanya, yes, Lizzie was sick for a couple of weeks, so that's why we were on here.
I did. I got the Rona.
Gosh. Okay. Jose Flores. Hello. I'm trying to avoid PMI. I am purchasing a home for $285,000 and the home is worth $500,000. When getting a loan, do I still have to put 20% down or can the PMI be waived since the home already has equity?
So that's probably a really unique situation because most people are actually buying homes that are not appraising for their purchase price. So I would say it depends on the situation. So let's say you're buying a property that's worth $500,000 from a family member and they're only selling it to you for $285,000. In that case, they can gift you the equity. You would not necessarily have to put down a down payment at that point, and then you could avoid private mortgage insurance. Otherwise, if you do not know the seller and they cannot gift you the equity, then you would have to put down 20%, or you could put down a lesser amount and then wait 6 months and refinance, or wait 2 years and then request the mortgage insurance come off. So there's a couple of options there, but 20% is a for sure way of not paying PMI.
Great. Okay. And then David asks, could you recap on this year? I just refinanced from 5.5% down to 2.65 interest rate, payments by 330.
Hold on, let me read the question.
Yeah, that one. And while Lizzie's reading that, Lizzie missed you too. She missed
Linda,
everybody.
I did. She's a champ. I love her. Okay, so let's see here. So I think what David Esquivel is trying to find out is that he went from a 5.5 to a 2.65, and he has 720 credit, and he wants to know, can he do better? I get questions like this a lot. So here's what I'm going to say. So hypothetically, you might be able to do an eighth to a quarter better. And there's going to be lots of companies that try to convince you to refinance to save $50 to $100. You really want to avoid these things. Every time you refinance, you actually take away from your equity because there are costs that are associated with your refinance that can just get tagged on. I personally would not refinance unless you're saving over 1% in interest and $200 a month. Otherwise, and staying there for a minimum of 4 years. Otherwise, you're just losing equity. And 2.65 was literally the historic low for the year. So honestly, I don't know that you could do much better right now. Interest rates are in the threes if you look at the Freddie Mac national average.
Okay. Brandon, he said, I'm looking to get pre-approved and fully underwritten. What documents should I gather to make sure my lender has everything that they need?
So here's the thing. So it actually depends on the type of loan, but here's a full list in case you want to just cover all of your bases. So you'll want to do 30 days of your most recent paycheck stubs and make sure that your year-to-date total in earnings is reflected on them. You'll want to get last year's W-2s. Potentially, if you're commissioned or have self-employment or rental income, you'll provide tax returns. Did I also say if you're self-employed? If you're self-employed, you'd provide tax returns. And then 2 months bank statements, any mortgage statements on any properties that you currently own, and then a copy of your driver's license. So that's a pretty comprehensive list. And you'll want to make sure that everything is the most recent that you can provide.
100%. Then Richard Rodriguez said, I got pre-qualified for a home loan, but my realtor hasn't gave me any paperwork, and it's been 30 days since my approval.
Okay, so a couple things here, because this is actually another question that I get asked often. So your real estate agent and your loan officer work together, and typically the approval information for your pre-qualification is a contractual form that's sent to the agent because they need it for submitting offers. You wouldn't get formal loan paperwork until you're under contract, and that's actually when they send you the paperwork for your actual loan application, the disclosures, all of the authorizations. What you should have received from your loan officer at this point is, a copy of what the terms look like, a fee estimate, maybe an email breakdown of, interest rate, monthly payments, total cash to close, because you need all of that for budgeting. But you wouldn't necessarily get any of that information from your real estate agent. And you can always request a copy of your approval letter too, but that would come from the lending side.
100%. And then Liberty asks, how low of an interest rate can I get on a 30-year conventional if I put 50% down?
So anything more than 25% is going to give you like the best breaks in terms of financing. It's really hard to quote interest rates right now, so I'm going to give you a range. And obviously, this is not a rate quote for all those people watching for compliance reasons, but you're probably in the high 2s to low 3s. Right, and then that's on a 30-year fixed. If you're looking at lower terms, you can expect rates in the 2s.
Awesome. All right, and then let's go to, I guess it's Demon. There's a 3 for the E.
Okay.
Is it too late to apply for a forbearance? Let's say if someone applies in April 2021, will their forbearance expire next year in 2022?
You can still call your servicer and request a forbearance. I will tell you that there's going to be so many more loan products that come out in terms of modification and payment stabilization, I guess is the best way to say it. I mean, they're talking about 40-year amortizations and different and creative ways to defer or forgive payments right now. So no, you can still definitely get a forbearance, and you most likely will not have to make payments until next year. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I will tell you though, like, that does have an impact on your ability to qualify for future properties. And we don't necessarily know what that total impact is yet. So I know that back in the days when loan modifications were really prevalent, they allowed them. And then once the economy started to stabilize, they changed the guidelines for allowing people to qualify with them. So just keep in mind that yes, it is a solution for today if you're in hardship, but we can never say what guidelines will do in the future.
Yeah, and reach out to your lender before.
Yeah.
You just.
But it is still a solution, and it's still a possibility for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, so I might butcher this name, so I'm just going to say the question. In order to qualify for a higher mortgage.
Is that Mr. Sabritas?
Sabritas.
Yes, Sabritas is like my favorite Mexican chip. Can I just tell you? So I just want to make sure.
Oh my God, I love that. In order to qualify for a higher mortgage, how would you go about reporting additional income from renting out rooms in the house you're prospectively buying?
So hypothetically, you can only use border income on a product called Home Ready. You have to be a first-time home buyer, and you have to have already shown that you've received 12 months of these types of deposits on your bank statements, and then even then you're only allowed to use 30%. So it is not possible to use future rents on a house that you're planning on occupying unless it's a multifamily home. Now, things that you might want to consider when it comes to trying to increase income are things like overtime can be counted, shift differential, bonus, commissions, side hustles if you have them, if you've had them consistently for 2 years. All of these things can be included so long as they're reflected on a tax return and you're paying taxes on them. Other things that you might want to look at are like getting a cosigner potentially. Or I had a client recently who has an elderly parent that's moving in with them that gets Social Security that we're able to use, because they're the beneficiary of that. So there are a lot of ways to maximize your qualification. Also think of paying off debts, right? That's a huge one. And one of the biggest ones is student loans, and figuring out ways to go conventional and be on an income-based repayment plan is another really great way of, increasing your purchasing power by, decreasing your debt.
100%. And then Liberty asks, what is the best way to find bank-owned properties here in Utah or foreclosures?
So that's a really, really difficult thing. There are, foreclosures and REOs out there. You can look them up on the Fannie Mae websites. So if you look up Fannie Mae foreclosures, you can see them. I know HUD has a list of distressed properties. They have like an auction process. Real estate agents are probably the best way to go about it. There isn't a public list really. You can, if you're really, really savvy, you can connect with a title person who can get you a list of people that are that have recently furnished a notice of trustee sale, so a notice of default. And then if you want to, you can go knocking on doors, and that's probably your most aggressive way of just getting a list done. I hope that makes sense. It will if you're a real estate agent. Let me know if that answered your question.
All right, and Angela asks, what is going on with the Biden $25,000 home buyer credit? Is there a news network that you could recommend to get factual market news?
Guys, there's all kinds of information that's being thrown out right now, and really there has not been any concrete details and or a plan with that. I think what's hard about homebuyer credits in this moment is that there's a need to help first-time homebuyers. So first-time homebuyers, they stabilize any real estate market, and you want to make sure that the majority of people that are purchasing are primary residents, so people that will occupy the homes that they're living in. And so there definitely is a need there, especially because, again, we're competing with investors and second home people and people relocating. And so I know that there's a need. Now, adding more buyers to an already compressed situation, I don't know if that's the solution or not. So I think, really figuring out solutions for affordable housing, creating more areas where people can afford housing is probably a better way to solve that. But there isn't really any concrete information. And when there is, I promise you, I will do a very detailed video on it.
And Lizy will be the first to know.
Maybe. I mean, I subscribe to quite a few things, but I will say that like a lot has happened in the month that I've been down. I mean, I'm just like, what?
I know, but you're back and healthy and you get those alerts all day long. So, all right. And then Willie asked about the 203K loan. Does he have to make mortgage payments while the house is being remodeled?
Yeah. So your loan starts right away. So you do. There are some renovation loans and some construction loans that actually finance in some of the payments. So, I mean, maybe just double check into what type of renovation loan you're looking at. But yes, so mortgage payments start within they close, you skip a month, and then you start making your payments on the first. After the 15th, they're considered late. So consider it like 45 days after you close on your home, a mortgage payment will be due. So I hope that helps answer your question.
Mm-hmm. All right. This one is, I wanted to ask if you had any experience with the Homes for Heroes program. If yes, do you recommend it first-time homebuyer in California?
So if it's the same program that I'm thinking about, what it is that there's a pool of professionals that are providing discounts to eligible like heroes, veterans, police officers, teachers. So, I mean, here's what I will say. You can probably get the same amount of discounts by just asking your local vendors that you trust. So if you know a real estate agent, presenting them with the information, they can probably get you the same type of pricing. If there is a specialized program, though, like there is in Arizona for first responders, or for there's special loans for doctors and attorneys, I mean, I would compare them, right? I would compare them with what you're getting in the normal market with whatever that program is. But it definitely is a program that provides discounts to you. And as a first-time home buyer, it's definitely something to look into.
All right. And then Rebecca asked, do you recommend applying for a first lien purchase HELOC instead of a traditional mortgage? I was told that as long as I have 10% down payment towards the house, then I would be able to pay off the home faster because the interest on the loan is simple interest.
Oh my goodness, guys. I get roasted on this very topic so much, and it drives me insane. So here's the thing. So the interest, when they talk about simple versus compounded, is that basically you just pay interest on whatever the balance is every single month on a line of credit, okay? A line of credit typically asks you for an interest-only payment, so you're never really paying down the principal. You're just paying off the interest. And then there's a certain period where they ask you to repay, and then they shorten the amortization. The reason why I don't like first lines of credit is because they're at a much higher interest rate than you can get on a 30-year fixed mortgage. And if you were somebody who was going to apply more to the principal balance, right, you will end up paying that home in a lesser time. There's a lot of confusion that mortgages are compounded interest, which means that every single month the interest, like you only pay a portion of your payment and then interest gets tacked on and then you start paying interest on top of that. This is not the case. Mortgages are amortized interest, meaning that they're scheduled payments for principal and interest every single month. And the more principal that you pay on a monthly basis, the more percentage of that payment goes towards principal and less on interest. So I do not like a first interest HELOC, especially in this market when you can get a rate in the 3s versus they're 4 to 6% right now. So. Mm-hmm. And then also, guys, a HELOC has verbiage that says that your interest rate can go all the way up to like 18% or something like that. And I know right now rates are historically low, but that's a clause that you should pay attention to, especially because we believe and know that interest rates will be rising in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Hopping off my soapbox.
Okay, Mark asks, I want to build a tiny pool house on my property to Airbnb. What kind of loan would you recommend to get for something like this? My wife thinks that Airbnbs might become an issue in the future. Do you think Airbnbs are a sustainable market?
So a couple things. So tiny homes are really difficult to finance because they're not conventional financing. So that is something that you might have to get a personal loan for or a line of credit on, but it will be a small amount. So in that case, even though you are paying higher interest, so long as you focus on paying the principal, you should be okay on that. As far as Airbnb as a long-term investment, I think that right now they're flourishing because people are afraid to travel, quite frankly, and they don't want to be around large groups of people. But the hotel industry has a ton of money, and prior to COVID was lobbying to get Airbnbs regulated and shut down. And I think that is going to be something that actually happens. Not to mention homeowners don't like it, and many homeowner associations are saying that they are not allowing them. So if it's an Airbnb, like a guest house on your personal property, and you occupy the primary residence and there is not an association that you belong to that's going to disallow it, I say go for it. And if they do, I mean, what's the worst case scenario? You're already living there. Just make it a long-term tenant, you know? So I think in your case, I think you'd actually be fine. I do think that Airbnbs are a risky long-term investment. But right now, I mean, people are making tons of money on them.
100%. Cassie, will a pre-approval come back less than a pre-qualification? If so, why? Husband's lender pulled credit, 760 score, submitted bank statements, 2-year W-2s, waiting for first round of underwriting to review the file.
That's an interesting thing. So a pre-qualification is just an application that somebody takes over the phone. A pre-approval is when they actually review all of your financials. It is common that a pre-approval will actually come in less than a pre-qualification, and that's just because the way that we review income is different than the way that people report their income, right? So like, for instance, on a self-employed borrower, they might do a net take-home of like $5,000 a month, but when what they're reporting as their net take-home income to pay taxes on is, let's say, $2,500 a month. We can only use the $2,500 even though we see $5,000 being deposited into their bank. The same thing with lots of people in COVID is like, let's say that they were, typically scheduled for 40 hours. Their hours have been reduced to 35. They might tell us that they make, $20 an hour and they work full time at 40 hours because that's historically what they work. As a lender, looking at their current paycheck stubs and what the average has been for the last 12 months, we'll probably just do a straight up average of the last 12 months, and that'll be lesser than 40 hours. So that is why they differ. Now, once you've been pre-approved, though, it is rare to have an underwriter change that, especially if you're working with an experienced loan officer. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about it too much if you're going into underwriting. People worry a lot because it is the largest financial investment that they're making. It's your biggest bill. And honestly, there's a lot of stress with not knowing where you're going to live. So it is very normal to feel very apprehensive right now, especially if you're under contract going into underwriting. But try not to worry if you're dealing with somebody experienced.
Mm-hmm. All right. DB, how does it work if I'd like to rent my current home and get a new home?
Yeah. So a couple things, right? And it also depends on the loan product. So some loan products will require you to have 25% equity to offset the mortgage payment with rent. So just keep that in mind. It really depends on the loan product. Mm-hmm. But typically what they'll do is they'll take 75% of the rental income that you're going to be receiving, and they're going to want to verify it on a lease. And then they'll use that to either offset the payment or to subtract against the monthly payment. So you'll have either a small loss or they won't be counting the payment at all against you, so that you can qualify for your new primary. But it's fairly simple. You'll want to take care of the lease stuff prior to, getting under contract on your new home. So that way you're not contingent, and you can set your leases up so that the tenant moves in after you close, right? So that's typically how that works. I hope I answered your question.
Mm-hmm. And can I just ask on top of that?
Yeah.
Is this the best route to go if you're trying to build a real estate portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually how I started investing in real estate, was just upgrading my primary residence. It allows you to purchase with minimum down. You do have to live in the property for 2 years so that you're not paying capital gains taxes if you plan on selling within 5 years. If you plan on owning the house forever, I mean, it won't really matter. And then, your loan requires you to live there at least 12 months.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
So, but that is how I acquired, like, literally my first 4 properties.
Yeah. All right, Abe, do you recommend keeping a starter home as a rental and save for a down payment to move up and or sell the starter home and then use that equity for the next home?
It depends on what you're doing with it. So I just told you how I acquired 4 properties because I was building up a rental portfolio. When my husband and I decided to move into our long-term property, so we have 3 children. We want to be in a certain neighborhood for a school. I know, and the schools, like the middle school and the high school, all around. So I know I'm not moving for good 20 years. For me, I sold all of my rental properties so that I could afford to buy in a neighborhood where I didn't necessarily have a large down payment for. So for me, it made total sense to sell and use the equity to invest in a better property because you have way more flexibility that way. But if you're looking to grow your rental portfolio and you know that you're not going to be in the area and you're going to keep upgrading, I would definitely save and then make it a rental.
100%. Manny, have you seen any appraisal issues in Phoenix, specifically Levine?
Oh Lord, have I seen appraisal issues? You guys, this is the bane of my existence right now. I'm literally giving people 3 different scenarios when they come to us because it is so likely, just with the aggressive bidding wars and just with how fast homes are appreciating, that they're just all over the map. I mean, I'm having at least 3 to 4, 5 conversations about appraisals a day. So here's what I would do to prep you. Okay. I think that in this market, and I know that there's some people that are really against paying over appraised value, but if I'm just talking about the semantics of getting an offer accepted right now, you will have to budget for down payment, closing costs, and then what you would budget your max limit on an appraisal gap. So that means the difference between a purchase price and what it appraises for. You need to have that plan figured out before you offer on properties. I'm seeing clients like waive appraisal contingencies with no plan and then losing all of their earnest money. That was a phone call I made today, and I'm not the one that negotiated the contract. That's just something that I end up having to deal with as a loan officer, but it's terrible. So yes, I think that if you're in the market to buy, and I don't care where you're in the market to purchase, an appraisal right now is an issue. And you should go into it with your eyes wide open, especially if you're bidding over asking, on what is the limit that you're willing to pay if that property does not come in at your purchase price.
100%. I absolutely agree. So this actually piggybacks on that. Are there any secrets to winning a bidding war?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this in 2 things, okay? So first and foremost, again, being really aggressive. So there's a variety of different things that people care about, and they're not always the highest dollar amount, okay? So these are things that people forget. So a lot of sellers in this marketplace have homes to sell, and they need to purchase something else. And so being able to be super flexible with people's move times is a great negotiating feature that will actually work in your favor. I've literally had several clients win the offer, right? Just because they were willing to do a 60-day lease back to the seller so that they could live in the house while their other house was closing and then themselves not have a contingent offer. Okay, so timing is something that you really want to make sure that your real estate agent is asking the seller about. Second thing is sometimes instead of length of time, they need quicker closes, right? So quicker closes, right? So sometimes it's less than 30 days. So having a fully pre-approved, underwritten loan, if you can get it, in your pre-approval process, super clutch right now. Guaranteeing an X amount of dollars over an appraised value is another way. People are getting really aggressive with that right now, but it is a way. Waiving contingencies, waiving inspections. I had a client literally bring a home inspector with them all day long to go view all of their properties so that they could be inspecting homes while they're writing offers, right? So I thought that was a really creative way. But just the more security and the more flexibility that you can give a seller right now, the better. Now, the other thing you have to consider is who the heck you're working with as a real estate agent. There are a lot of realtors out there right now. Literally everyone is becoming a realtor. And it pays to know somebody who's very, very experienced, because I'm going to give you a horrific example. We had a client who literally got under contract with a wholesaler. And a wholesaler is somebody who like, just think of them as a broker between a real estate agent and or a seller and another seller. And they're just the middleman collecting a fee. So like, and they don't typically close on their contract until you close on your contract. So it's this weird wrap system, and they don't typically qualify for conventional financing. But this contract was written, and it literally did, like, once they got under contract, my client forfeited their earnest money. There was no clause for financing, there was no clause for inspection, and there was no clause for anything. And the agent never checked to see, is this a financeable contract? Number one. Right? So before they even communicated with us, the client already lost their earnest money. That's the kind of stuff that's happening in this market. And if you're working with a bozo who doesn't know, who's saying, yep, absolutely, we're going to pay $400,000 for this $300,000 house, no appraisal contingency, no appraisal limitation. I mean, you're asking for trouble. So super important if you're wanting to not aggressively overpay and not put yourself in a position where you're going to lose money on a house you don't even buy, is make sure that you are vetting your real estate agents. Mm-hmm. This is an experienced market only place.
Yes. All right. River Goy, thank you so much for the donation. Here's his question. Okay. How can I avoid the student loan 1% rule with FHA loans?
So here's the only way out of that, okay? The only way out of that is to get a fully amortizing loan payment letter from the student loan place and then hope that it's less than your 1%, right? Oh. If not, you really want to figure out how to qualify conventionally. So conventional Freddie Mac loans require 0.5%, and then Fannie Mae loans will let you do income-based repayment, whatever that is.
Cool. Awesome. Sorry if I seemed anxious. I was like super excited to answer his question.
We got $5.
I know. I was super stoked. I was like, all right, Lizzie, finish your answer so we can ask his question.
Sorry. I know.
But that's me. I'm like,
it's just such a crazy market out there right now. And like, I just hate that.
Yeah. And it's really important on who your lender is and who your real estate agent is. So, all right. B. I don't want to mess up that name. Bedoten? Hello. What areas of a single-family home would you recommend to upgrade for best ROI?
Okay, so anytime you can add square footage is definitely a place where you can actually increase your value. Upgrading kitchens, upgrading bathrooms, a really great way. I will tell you though, it's not a dollar for dollar increase in value. Things like air conditioners, roofs, just so you know, they're expected to be in working order. And even if they're brand new, sometimes they actually don't add any value to your property because the expectation is that you have a working AC and that you have a roof that does not leak. So FYI there. So you want to make actual improvements to square footage, actual improvements to the condition of the property, and then like landscaping, curb appeal matters. And then things like pools, guys. Pools cost like $30,000 to $40,000, but probably only give you $5,000 to $15,000 worth of increased value in your home. So you just also want to make sure that you're not overspending on things like pools. But increasing square footage, upgrading kitchens and bathrooms, best ways to improve your value.
You know what? That actually just brought up something. I had a friend that purchased a home. They actually ended up purchasing this home because it already had a pool. And after they purchased it, they found out like the pool was very old, and they ended up putting like $20,000 in repairing the entire pool. And looking back at it, they really liked the other property better, and they could have just installed the pool themselves or like had somebody come out. And so that's
But this is why you have to get inspections, good inspections. I know people are really foregoing them now, but I mean, I would say that that's not an uncommon problem, especially in Phoenix.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Nicole, can I put some of my closing costs on my loan?
The only way to do that, so refinances, absolutely, you finance in the closing costs. The only way to do that on a purchase is to increase your interest rate and have the lender do a credit back.
Got it.
Hey, Nicola.
Oh my gosh, you just said, I wanted to thank you for all of the advice. We are under contract and set to close next week in Sacramento on our duplex. You and Javi recommended the agent to us. I love this.
That makes me super happy. That is awesome. And thank you so much for being a long-term viewer. God, I'm so bad at the whole YouTube lingo. And I have COVID brain now. So there's that. But I'm so pumped for you. Woohoo!
Yeah. Lizard Queen is back.
Thanks, Javi.
All right. I want to buy, but are FHA buyers winning homes right now?
So here's the thing, guys. FHA buyers are winning homes right now. You just have to be strategic about how you offer and make sure that the sellers are aware that if there's any FHA required repairs on chipping paint, on termite damage, on water damage, that you'd be willing to help make those repairs, because that's typically the thing that people don't like. The other thing is that, FHA and VA, especially VA, I've seen them anecdotally come in more at value than conventional loans right now. So it is something to say. And the lower down payment, hopefully the more wiggle room you have in additional funds to secure for appraisal contingencies and appraisal gaps. So things to consider. It's just how you leverage and present yourself to the seller.
100%. And then will you also touch base on VA loans?
Yeah, so VA loans, so most appraisers take into account like time adjustments, but VA actually does put weight on pending listings. And so there are things that you have to consider because not all loan types do that. Not to mention, VA is 100% financing and historically low interest rates. So VA buyers have a lot of flexibility in what they're able to do with lender credits, if they're able to come in with, additional funds over their appraised value, and it's because they have the most flexibility with what they have to put down. So I love VA in this environment, and we're actually seeing a lot of veterans get their offers accepted now.
All right, David asks, can you waive appraisal contingencies with an FHA loan?
Yes, so this is kind of an urban legend. So VA and FHA have these forms in there called a VA amendatory clause and a VA escape clause, and essentially what they say is that a buyer is not obligated to purchase the house if the house does not appraise. Just so that you know, most states have this in their real estate contracts. You're not obligated to buy the house. The thing that you're going to do, though, if you've waived your appraisal contingency, is that you're going to forfeit your earnest money. Okay? They can't make you buy it, but there is a penalty for canceling. So just keep that in mind.
Liberty asks, do you recommend the USDA 502 direct loan? Sorry, I know you probably don't deal with this that much.
So I don't, because Arizona, I haven't literally done a USDA loan in 4 years. And that's because there's just not a whole lot of eligible areas in Arizona. But I will say that as a first-time home buyer, it is another loan that, again, allows a lot of flexibility. You can finance closing costs into that. It has a lower and more flexible credit requirement. And yeah, honestly, I think if it's available to you in your area, it is something that you should consider. But I also would compare it to the other options as well.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get unless you do a comparison. And a lot of times when you call into big banks, when you call into call centers, you're just going to get one option. They're going to say, yep, you qualify for that 30-year fixed mortgage that you qualified for, and they're not going to look at anything else. So definitely call in, ask for 3 scenarios.
Absolutely. Hey guys, real quick, we have about 10 minutes left, so make sure to submit any other questions that you want Lizzy to answer before our time is up. All right. Is now the time for a first-time home buyer?
Okay, that's a loaded question. And so here's the deal. Real estate's a long-term investment. I'm talking to 10, 20 years. If that's how long you plan on owning your house, it doesn't matter if you're a first-time home buyer, a second, a move-up buyer, whatever. You'll do fine. Everyone has to live somewhere, and investing in real estate has historically been one of the best investments you can make for your retirement, for your leverage. So I will say yes. One of the biggest mistakes I made, I bought a home underprepared with a shit loan back in 2006, literally 2-year ARM. Okay. And as an underinformed buyer, I was over leveraged, house poor, and it was very, very stressful. Now, as an investment, had I kept that property, I would be doing awesome, especially if I'd kept it for 10 years, which I didn't. I sold it at a loss. So I learned so many things with that property. But as long as you're doing 30-year fixed, you're budgeted, you have assets, you're going to live there for a long time or own it for a long time, I think it's a good investment.
Yeah, 100%. And then actually to touch base on that, Rick Siegel, he sent a comment, a thank you comment to you specifically on this. He said, I'm so glad I came across your video. They say you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. Wrong. I'm 61, and thanks to you, I have learned something new. The part where it's not a quick fix, it's a lifestyle. He's like, I think that is absolute key.
Yes. So he was talking about my budgeting practices. So if you are a first-time home buyer and you're needing to save in this environment, my suggestion is budget 70% of your net take-home income and allocate at least 10%, if not more, towards the savings for a down payment. If you do this religiously every single month, you'll have a down payment in anywhere between 2 to 3 years. Right, if you're making the area median income of like $68,000, okay?
Awesome. And then Chris asks, what is the difference between a credit and a grant? Is Biden giving a grant or a credit?
Well, that is a good question. So I don't know because there's no details, but the difference between a grant is typically non-repayable. And so you're just getting money from the government if you make certain requirements. There are many municipalities, so you want to look this up for your area, that actually do provide first-time homebuyer grants. Typically, it's for people that make 80% of the area median income. So it's hard to qualify for. Now, you were talking about a credit. So a credit is like an agent or an interested party can give a credit towards closing costs on your transaction. So it can only go towards closing costs, not down payment, not payment on debts. So, I mean, that's the difference there. There is also something called bonds and down payment assistance. And those are typically no interest, no payment silent loans that get attached to your property and that are paid off either when you sell your loan or after a period of forgiveness. So that is also something that you might want to look into.
100%. And then Liberty asks, can I use my IRA from a former employer as a down payment? Tax-free.
Not tax-free, but yes, you can use it as a down payment. You guys, retirement funds are always those things that are, kind of questionable with whether or not you use them for down payment. Obviously, there's tax penalties, lesser tax penalties if you use them to buy a real estate property. But there's also that concept of robbing Peter to pay Paul. You still have to pay back the money if you're borrowing from a 401k, and that will have an impact to your monthly budget. So definitely consider this before, what that actual financial impact will be on all scales before you just take it out of your retirement.
Absolutely. Look at Bass.
Aww.
Says, what's up from Bakersfield?
What's up, Bass?
You've helped me so much along the house journey. Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. I
tell you that it brings me so much joy how much joy Sammy gets from reading these comments.
I really do. And I'm like a Lizy fan. So every time somebody, she's changed somebody's life, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. This is so awesome. So great.
I think everyone needs a Sammy.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, Manny, what is your average closing time in this market?
On conventional loans, it's about 26 days. On FHA and VA, it's probably about 30 to 35. And then down payment assistance, about solid 45 days. And that's just because they have to take a home buyer education class, and those loans actually have to go through a second underwriting approval. And also, guys, that's different for every company, so you will want to check. That is what is current for ours. So again, like I said, if you're really wanting to be competitive in your marketplace, that's a good question to ask your loan officer.
Yep, absolutely. Liberty, no. I'm actually engaged. I'm not single.
Recently engaged, though.
Recently engaged.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, we have time for one or two more questions.
I think we have time for one more question.
Liberty, you're awesome.
I love this.
I want to meet you in person.
Okay. So I'm going to ask one just from the questions here because I think that they're super important. Okay. So Stacy Allard says, oh, goodness. Okay. So this is a very charged statement. So it says, I'm afraid this market is going to continue to rise and normal people will be locked out of the market forever. We'll be forced to rent, in all caps, from our German landlords or Amazon landlords. What do I say to this? I think the big fear is that we are pricing out normal Americans from being able to purchase. And I think that that's why there's so much talk about inflation and there's so much talk about the minimum wage. And I definitely think it's going to be a super concern for the government. Obviously, we don't want homes to be unaffordable. I do want you to know that panic happens in literally every type of market for every kind of investment in history. So like it'll happen with the stock market. Stocks will go up. People will think they'll never be able to fall or purchase a certain stock. The stock will have a bad day, several bad days, bad press, a lawsuit, that'll go down. People will be able to invest again. Markets go through recessions, economies go through recessions, and so we will see a correction in real estate. I can't say it's next month, I can't say it's in 6 months, but there will be a correction. And, like the best example of that, interest rates increased 0.5%, and we saw mortgage applications like quickly decline, right? And that had an impact on people buying today. So do not get discouraged. Please try not to read into weird conspiracy theories. So, I mean, my heart goes out to you, but do not panic in this market.
Yeah, 100%. And then Bass just wants to know when you're doing an in-person seminar.
I don't know, guys. I'll get back to you on that. Do you guys want an in-person seminar?
That would be super fun. Then we get to put faces to names. All right. Do you have time for one more? You want to do one more?
Okay. So we got one more. Let's take it from Manny58.
All right. I have Lizzie and Javier on my team, so I know my fiance and I will get an offer accepted any day now.
Woo! Woo, Manny!
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Sabrina, how long does the home buyer's education cert last for? Do you have to take it over and over again?
You guys, I think it only lasts for 6 months. It used to last for 12. I believe it only lasts for 6 months. So we've been informing our clients to do them when they get under contract for the first time. So that way they don't have to repeat them. It is crappy. It is only 2 hours of your life, though, and very valuable information. And can get you a discount on your homeowner's insurance.
Yeah, so that's a huge plus.
Yes.
All right.
Alrighty, guys. Well, I hope you guys have a phenomenal Wednesday night. Happy hump day. Yes, and stay healthy, friends.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.